Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on empowering the virtual close. My name is Ian McDougall, and I'm an account director at BlackLine. I'm pleased to be partnering with our friends at 4Point, John and David, and I'm happy to support them in their conversations with you. Before we begin, I wanted to cover off a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets that you can use. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. We will try to answer these questions during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or if we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. We do capture all questions, so you can feel free to add them there. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the maximize icon in the top right of the slide area or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. If you have any technical difficulty, please do click on the help widget, which covers common technical issues. Also, simply refreshing your browser can clear common issues such as slides not advancing or loss of sound. So in terms of an agenda, I am going to be starting by giving you some information about my organisation. Then I'm going to talk about some of the things that you may want to consider as you move to a more virtual way of working. I'll quickly touch on some key concepts to show how BlackLine enables this future state. And this will be followed by the main event with David and John taking us into the solution and showing how BlackLine can deliver results. We'll save some time at the end to talk about how you can make this a reality for your business and for some Q&A. So BlackLine is the market leader in the month-end automation space. We're headquartered in LA and have had a strong presence in Australia and New Zealand since 2009. We have over 3,600 customers globally, and over 200 of these are here in Australia. There are currently over 250,000 people using BlackLine worldwide, and over 12,000 accountants in our region log in daily. We have a local team of 25 people, including dedicated support and customer success roles based in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. And we run multiple user groups and events every year and have had a strong presence across all sectors. So we're here to support you and help you achieve your corporate goals. It's no secret that currently we are all test subjects in the largest work from home experiment ever. The last 2 years have thrown some serious challenges at every organisation across the spectrum. I won't speculate on what the future holds for the COVID pandemic, but I think we can all be assured that the way that we work has and will change in the years to come, and perhaps it'll never go back to the way it was in 2019. A recent poll by Gartner found that 91% of HR leaders have implemented work from home policies. However, the biggest challenges facing teams are adapting their technology infrastructure to support them and modifying existing processes to be work from home compatible. For finance teams, the challenges are coming to the forefront as accountants are working from home, often struggling with manual accounting, spreadsheets, desktop tools, and paper-based processes that were already hard enough when they were working in the office. Managing accounting can have a profound and detrimental effect on remote staff's productivity and engagement, and even create a security risk for those that have not modernised their processes and technology. The shift to remote work has been gradual before the current crisis, but this is no longer. COVID has highlighted the need to enable workforce flexibility and business continuity. So, how do we, as finance and accounting leaders, go about empowering our teams? Well, first we need to look at existing processes and technology and remove the barriers that are holding teams back. We then need to apply some critical thinking to the period end close processes so accounting teams are able to deliver a better outcome for the business and shorten the traditional monthly blackout process at close time. So, how do we do this? Well, firstly, we must ensure that all data is documented and is accessible for teams that are working from home. Next, we've got to ensure that our existing technology is not creating a bottleneck that might throttle productivity. Then, we can streamline close processes that take up valuable time during the close and remove manual steps that slow teams down. And finally, We need to ensure that the knowledge on how to sequence and perform and review or approve critical financial close processes is not just owned by a few employees or reliant on undocumented tribal knowledge. Now, audits are painful at the best of times, but they can be even more challenging when everyone is remote. So managing PBC requests and status using spreadsheets, chasing down supporting documentation, and trying to provide requested documents or evidence. As you can see on this slide, CFOs are reliant on old technology, and they are realizing that the impact that this has on visibility and cost come audit time. So how can we mitigate the risk of a remote audit? Well, firstly, the cloud can provide secure access to centralized real-time information from anywhere that enables a secure, consistent, role-based auditor self-service. This reduces both audit costs and effort. Control owners and internal audit can start to operate together, and at the same time, external auditors can remain independent of the function. Everyone can work from a common, unified, and up-to-date environment that is accessible from anywhere. Workflow and task management tools can ensure consistent and repeatable processes and provide a robust backbone for PBC review and approvals. Finally, web-based reporting and analytics can improve audit staffing and data security by providing secure, role-based access to the right reports, removing the need to distribute information to teams and locations manually or to overshare spreadsheet workbooks. In these times of economic uncertainty, teams are under more pressure than ever to deliver fast and accurate results. Waiting weeks for clear financial pictures strangles predictability and is simply not an option. Adding automation can enable a substantial amount of work to be performed throughout the accounting cycle, continuously, robotically, and systematically, with variances and exceptions flagged in real time for human intervention. It can dramatically reduce the amount of period-end accounting work in areas like reconciliations by up to 90%. This means not only shortening the close, but having a more accurate picture of the financials going through the period. So we have seen the challenges and impacts of working remotely. Let's move on now and talk about how BlackLine helps teams move forward in a virtual world. So we see unsustainable manual accounting processes as the largest challenge to closing remotely. Manual accounting drains too many resources, it takes too much time, and creates unnecessary risk and exposure. So why is this? Well, firstly, it's time consuming. Today, organizations can spend over 10 working days a month on close processes. By adding in some automation and behavior change, this could be reduced by 30 to 40%. Secondly, it's risky and elevates the chance of errors. In a recent survey of finance professionals, 55% shared that they were not entirely confident that they can identify financial errors before reporting results, and nearly 70% of leaders said that they've made a significant business decision based on inaccurate financials. And of those closest to the process, the accountants themselves, just 38% said that they trusted the numbers. Thirdly, it's costly. With many organizations having a high degree of manual accounting, reducing the cost of accounting operations is critical. Finally, repetitive period-end processes take their toll on staff morale. 34% of productivity is lost when a staff member is disengaged. From staff accountants to controllers and CFOs, the traditional way of getting accounting work done causes pain for everyone. Too many disparate systems prevent you from seeing where you stand in the close. A non-uniform process leads to a control risk. Detail-heavy spreadsheets increase the likelihood of mistakes, escalating your risk of financial inaccuracy. Manual effort keeps your team spending a disproportionate amount of time on work that is repetitive, and there's not enough time for analytical activities that they really want to dig their teeth into. Taken together, this creates a disengaged workforce, threatening your ability to retain and attract top talent. So we've seen this at more than 3,600 companies in the past. And it's important to note that it's not traditional accounting processes are necessarily broken. They've just failed to modernize. And the way forward is modern accounting. Modern accounting is unified, automated, and continuous. Modern accounting is unified, meaning that your systems and data are integrated for a single source of the truth, and your processes are standardized for consistency, efficiency, and control. So modern accounting is automated. You can reduce the amount of time that you spend on what you might characterize as busy work by automating your manual repetitive activities, so you can free up time to focus on those strategic objectives that really matter to the C-suite. And modern accounting is continuous. We can execute accounting as it happens and deliver real-time information and analysis to inform decisions. BlackLine's platforms remove the silos and visibility barriers to create a collaborative environment to complete the close. Finally, modern accounting is achievable. You can get there quickly, you can see powerful results immediately, and businesses of all shapes and sizes are embracing it for transformational outcomes. So now I would like to hand over to John and David from 4Point, who will take us through the solution in more detail.
G'day, I'm John Christodoulou, the Southern Regional Territory Manager for 4Point Solutions, and I just wanted to share a little bit about our team here at 4Point today. I'll get David to introduce himself in a second, but really what I wanted to share was, number one, what Ian introduced earlier. We're really proud that we've successfully helped over 60 plus clients deliver projects 100% remotely. Customer experience is 4Point's mantra, and we love making life easier for our clients. That's what we do. We achieve this because our services team are all accountants, and a majority of whom are CA or CPA qualified. So, we get your pain points. Lastly, we can provide trusted advice because we've lived and breathed this for 20 odd years. So I'll get David to introduce himself and provide an overview of how we help our clients using BlackLine. Cheers.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name's David Shahinian, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm one of the directors of 4Point and have been working with BlackLine for the last 6 years as part of our one of our solutions for, our Office of the CFO solution set. The primary, what I want to do today is show you BlackLine in action and looking at a day in the life of your accountant who prepares the recs, your management team that might review it, and the CFO who would like to look at things from the 50,000-foot view. But before I get started on that, I really just want to sort of look at what the the record to report process looks like. So the typical record to report process essentially looks like this, where on the left-hand side we've got all our imports from our system of record. Could be your ERP, bank statement data, data from other operational sub-ledger systems. And then on the right-hand side, we've got our outputs. So our things like our management reports, statutory reports, perhaps data needs to go to a consolidation or planning system. And those outputs we need to make sure that the data we're sending is accurate and correct, and we know that the numbers have been validated. In order to get from the inputs to the outputs, a whole bunch of work is happening. There's a whole bunch of activity, and a great deal of that ends up being manual when people aren't using BlackLine. Performing these activities takes up time, requires a lot of effort, and there's always a greater amount of risk associated with this. So where does BlackLine fit in? We like to think BlackLine fits squarely in the middle of that record to report process, filling in that white space. As Ian mentioned, BlackLine's a cloud-based platform, so your accounting team from anywhere can use the system to produce a timelier and more accurate close. But it doesn't just do that, it also allows you to increase the level of transparency and also the level of control throughout the month-end close process. The other thing I want to highlight here is you actually don't need to do anything with your existing tech stack. BlackLine is meant to be a complementary solution. So it would work with any GL, and it will basically pick up from where your Excel-based systems currently are in place. So let's have a look at what BlackLine looks in practice. Okay, so I've logged in as my accountant, Kim Wilson, and what we want to do with BlackLine is just demonstrate how we can make you less focused on the transactional side of things, where you're in spreadsheets and manipulating data, and how you can gradually become more analytical and become more of a strategic. If we log into BlackLine, you'll notice that at the moment we're wearing the preparer hat, and when I've logged in, it's taken me straight to my homepage, my dashboards. So in my dashboards, I'm presented with a number of cards which really tell me what I have to do in terms of the close process. It tells me what are the key things I need to focus on. Here you can easily see what some of my overdue recs are, so where I'm not completing things in a timely manner. I can also see what tasks I need to complete. And all of these cards can be drilled down to the individual items that they represent. So you can click on, for example, on key tasks, and at the bottom you'll be presented with your list, which you can maximize, and you can drill to the individual records that you're working on. What we can also do is see things like the reconciliation certification status. So this really tells you where you're at in terms of your account reconciliations that you need to close as part of your month-end close. You'll notice we differentiate between key and non-key accounts. Key accounts typically have an earlier due date. They usually represent your higher risk accounts. So these are the accounts that could have a material misstatement on your financial statements if they're not completed correctly and not completed in time to publish your financial statements. You'll also notice that our accounts have different statuses, and one of those statuses is system certified. So this is an example where BlackLine can also help you speed up your close process by automatically certifying accounts using our standards auto certification rules. An example of that could be where you are bringing in your GL balance and a balance from your subledger, and if they match or are within an acceptable threshold, then BlackLine can automatically certify that account and free up your time. So let's have a look at how a preparer might start their day. And typically they might go in and view the tasks that they've got to work on. So here we have a view of our task list. At a glance, we can easily see what's due, when is it due, and who is responsible for completing that task. But tasks don't have to be standalone as well. What we can see is that some of our tasks actually have dependencies, as you can see by the dependency tree. What we can do is click on one of these tasks, and it will actually take you to effectively the to-do list. We can look at the bottom and we can say, well, that's the first thing we have to do, which is go and collect the paperwork, the invoices, any registers that we have to prepare. Once we've completed that, then we move on to the next step of that task, which might be to prepare a journal. And lastly, your last step might be to complete an account reconciliation. And once you've completed those 3 underlying tasks, then you've effectively completed the parent task. Each of these tasks also sit within a workflow. So if you're the preparer, once you've completed something, the system will automatically notify the approver or reviewer who have to go in and also certify the account if that's what's required. So let's have a look at this first task. Now, when I look at this task, the layout is consistent amongst all of our tasks that need to be prepared. You'll always see the purpose. In other words, what is it that I have to do? You'll see instructions, which can be very detailed with a step-by-step instruction on what needs to be done to complete this task. As someone who is responsible for creating the task, you can add comments. And if some of those instructions require you to go and attach documents or prepare registers, you can do all that and you can attach those documents to the task. Now, once you've completed that task, you can have a certification statement and a checklist. Again, totally user definable. You can click on your checklist. You've got a certification state language, which you can configure as well. And once you're happy with that, you can say that that task is complete. Now, once we go back to our task list, if we click on that task, you notice is that task now has status of completed next to it, or a status of prepared in this case, where someone then needs to go on, review and approve that task. But you can see that it will notify the next person in the workflow that they've got something to do. So you can then move to the next step of your to-do list. In this case, we can create a journal. Here I'm going to go and do an account reconciliation. So if I click on that particular task, I can view the record. Now, this particular activity is preparing an actual account reconciliation. So just like looking at tasks, we saw a consistent approach. Account reconciliations are similar. There's quite a large number of controls that you can put into your reconciliation templates so that all of your reconciliations have a consistent look and feel. But we don't dictate what that looks like. You can actually control that. So if you decide that I'd like to see my account information up the top, I'd like to see my supporting items after my amortization schedules and then a GL balance, you can define it that way. If you want to see things in a different order, some people like to see the GL balance and the unidentified difference at the top, then you can control your templates. You drag and drop your controls to whichever order you want. And then you can ensure that all of your accounts use that template. And you can use different templates for different types of accounts. But all in all, when you look at an account reconciliation, you get to see a lot of standard controls. One of those is just the account information. So, and in a single place, we can see all the important information about that account. Here we're looking at the currency of the account, if there's a certification threshold, what checklists are going to be used, is it a key or non-key account, who the preparer, the approver, and the reviewer is, and what the frequency is of preparing those accounts, the purpose of the account, and also the correct reconciliation procedures. So all the IP about completing that rec is not in someone's head, it's on the face of the individual reconciliations. We can also choose to include the balance from the previous month. So whilst we have, in this case, amortization schedules loaded and supporting items created, we're not starting from scratch every month. We only have to deal with the change from the previous month. And we can see the schedules that were created last month. We can see how old they are. We notice here that we've actually created an amortization schedule, so we can edit this, we can add a comment, we can look at the schedule itself. and we can see that, yep, that's a 3-month payment that's going to be amortized, and we can see the balance reducing over the course of the next 3 months. If we go back to the account reconciliation, notice that this was a supporting item, was classified as a required adjustment, was created last month, saying that a new prepayment schedule for our LA office needed to be created. Now, since that required adjustment was created, that someone has already created that schedule for us. So that's an example where BlackLine doesn't have to just be used by an individual account. We can also work in teams. So if an account's been set up that a team can work on it, someone else could have loaded the schedules. So I can come in here and say, right, that a required adjustment from last month, that's now been actioned. So we can click on a link to close this item. Once we close that item, we've dealt with the unidentified difference. And now we can go down, tick off our items on our checklist, and we're able to certify that account because we've dealt with the unidentified difference and we're now within the threshold that lets us certify it. Now, if I certify it, it will move to the next person in the workflow. A notification will be sent so that the approver can go in and work on it. However, if for whatever reason a journal is posted into your ERP and the balance changes, then because we're integrating with most ERPs and getting regular updates of the GL balances, BlackLine will also decertify that account because it will notice that the balance has changed, and it will send a notification back to the preparer, and it will appear in the preparer's queue as a decertified account. So they know that they need to go and fix something up. You'll also notice just, again, some value adds that you get all in the centralized place. So when I'm looking at a rec, I can print a nice friendly version of it. I can look at my historical balances of this account, so I don't have to go and navigate out into my ERP to get that information. I can view the life that that reconciliation has gone through for this month, so I can see where it's at, who's rejected it, why it was rejected. I can also view all of my recs in a single year view. So I can see all the supporting items, all the prepayments, and so on. Now, that's one example of a rec. I want to go through another example that is slightly different. So we don't just help with month-end recs where we might use a prepayment schedule or an accrual schedule. We can also help accountants with their reconciliation from a high volume of transaction perspective. So, for example, when you're dealing with a bank account, most ERPs have a bank reconciliation capability, but some of them don't. And in this case, this is where BlackLine can help. Rather than downloading your statement and ticking off your statement against your general ledger, our transaction matching functionality or our transaction matching application lets you load transactions from your GL and your bank statements and start matching those transactions automatically for us. And that could be one-to-one matches. They can be one-to-many, many-to-one, or many-to-many. So you've got that control. You can choose a higher level of complexity in your matching rules that a lot of times your ERPs don't allow you to do. So let's have a look at an example of a bank account or an account reconciliation that involves a bank account that requires matching. So a similar look and feel, but a slightly different template has been applied to this reconciliation. Okay. In this case, I can see that I've got a match set associated with this particular rec. I still have my supporting items where I'm explaining items that have not been reconciled or there's some sort of required adjustment, but I have bank items as well. And this is where I'm creating supporting items that are generated from the bank statement rather than my GL. Okay, but Other than that, we're still dealing with an unidentified difference, a GL balance that's been imported on a recurring basis from my ERP, comments, supporting documents, hyperlinks, and a certification statement. So you can see that within our match set, we've got matches that have happened automatically. So we schedule your imports, but then we also schedule the running of the matching process. And we don't just have standard matching rules. We can have things that are automatic matches, but we can also have things that are suggested matches where we're not quite sure it's right. We need someone to review it and decide whether to approve it or not. And we also have the ability to create manual matches. So if I look at my unmatched screen, the system will return two sets of transactions for us. And we choose what the fields are that come into BlackLine, and we can also choose what fields we want to display when we're looking at our matching transactions. Load. So you can see on our left-hand side, we've got transactions that have been posted into or transactions from our bank statement, and we can see transactions on our GL. There may be transactions here that were just not matched because there was missing information, but we know that we can tick the items manually and we can do a manual match. What we can also do is we can identify things that have not been ticked off the bank statement, or things that have not been ticked off the general ledger yet because they haven't been presented on the bank statement. And we can tick those items, and we can actually easily create supporting items or outstanding items that will make its way to the face of the reconciliation that will allow us to explain the unidentified difference and complete the reconciliation. And we can also create rules that will automatically, after the matching process has been completed, that will automatically create these supporting items. So what we're dealing with is the exception and not the easy high volume matches that we currently have to do manually. And there's a couple of smarts within the account rec process where you can see you can create items from transactions, but we can also, perhaps the next day, the statement's loaded and it's matched off to the GL. So those items are now matched off. We've got shortcuts to allow us to automatically close those items that we created previously because now they've been matched off to the statement. So all of that allows you to work more efficiently in completing your bank reconciliation process. So hopefully it gives you an idea of how BlackLine can help introduce standardization and controls and maintain that visibility for the preparer and allow them to be more efficient in their day-to-day operations. But why don't we look at things from an approver's perspective, what their life might look like within BlackLine. So let's log out. And what we'll do is we'll log in as Pat. Pat's our manager and is responsible for certain approvals. It can be noted that within your team, you can also wear both roles. You can be both a preparer and an approver. You just can't prepare and approve the same account at the same time. So I'm in here as Pat. And I've got to, again, I'm coming into my dashboard, but this time I'm looking at things that are really related to my work that I need to complete. So if I look at my reconciliation certification status, I can see that as an approver, there's 72 accounts that I need to approve. Quite a lot of them have not been, I must have rejected one recently. And I can see that there's one that has been prepared. So I can click on that and go straight to that reconciliation from my dashboard. Now, as an approver, I still get to see that consistent look and feel of the reconciliation. A template's been applied. Here instead of having detailed supporting items, they're summarized, but I can click on the magnifying glass to see the detail. I can view both amounts in the account currency or an alternative currency. But you'll notice that I can't edit any of these items. All I can do is view them, look at the comments, look at the schedules. I can add comments myself. I can even add supporting documents. I can see that the preparer's gone through their checklist. But ultimately what I can do here is I can choose whether I want to certify this account, or perhaps what I want to do is reject it because something's not right. So this is where you've got your operational control. So I'm now not just rejecting an account because it hasn't been prepared correctly, but I'm putting some reasoning behind it. So later on, we can do some analysis and see, well, how many of my accounts are getting rejected on a monthly basis because they're not prepared correctly, and what's the reason behind it? Is there data missing? Is the documentation insufficient? Are they just not following the policies and procedures? So you really get to do some of that analysis around why things are getting rejected. Maybe it's not that important when you're all sitting in the same office, but in organizations that have got finance teams spread out, or in the environment that we've been operating with in the last 18 months where people are working remotely, these kind of functionality becomes really powerful. So that's the life of the approver. So let's log back out and log back in as Kim and show you what the experience of BlackLine is as a business leader. Okay, so I'm back as Kim, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to wear my CFO hat. So we'll just screen load, roll, and switch across the CFO. So what are our objectives what BlackLine can help you with is build that level of trust with your financial management systems, and also the processes that are in place to ensure that tasks are completed on time, account recs are completed accurately and in a timely manner. Our objective, or where we can help you achieve your objective of having a reliable financials and ultimately mitigating that level of risk. Okay. You'll notice that from a CFO perspective, my dashboards are a bit different. I'm not really interested in what's in my work queue. I'm more interested in some of the metrics around my business. So I'd like to see my certification statuses. I want to know where they're at. I want to know how they're split between key and non-key. I might be looking at my sum of my open required adjustments. Here I can see that I've got a lot of required adjustments that are over a year old. So that's showing me the financial risk within my business. Why are those items still open? Again, I can click on those. I can take me to the individual supporting items that have been created. I can also see how my teams are performing. So here I've got my recs that have been prepared past their due date. I've split that up between key and non-key. My graphs are interactive, so I can hover over a particular part of that chart and it'll tell me that's my Paris office, the key accounts, 51 accounts are not being prepared in a timely manner. My task certification process, etc. All of these things tell me how my teams are performing, whether they're meeting our timelines or whether there's problems that we need to identify. We can also manage risk. So we have the ability to create risk rules. So for example, if we create a rule that might look at abnormal balances in accounts, perhaps someone's coded a journal entry and got the debits and credits the wrong way around. If we create a rule that will look out for those things, then the as soon as that rule's triggered, or as soon as that GL balance comes in and the rule's triggered, then that account might be escalated. The risk priority might rise to high. It might be assigned to a reviewer as well, so that they can cast their eye over why there's been an anomaly in that account. So BlackLine helps you manage and mitigate those risks. We've also got the ability to look at things from a variance analysis perspective. So if I click on variance analysis, we can create variance rules. So this is where we might define rules that just compare the balance of an account from one month to the other, or from actuals to budget. So where there's a variance and it's outside an acceptable tolerance, be it a financial amount or a percentage, then we need someone to come in and explain that risk. Okay, so here you can look at our variance analysis. These are items that have been triggered. We can see the unexplained amounts. And anything that's at 100% basically means that someone has to explain that level of risk. I can see here one that only has a small difference, so it must be within that threshold, and it's now got an exposure of 0. If we click on the View button, let's have a look at that variance analysis again. We'll just change back to our CFO role. And bring up the variance analysis. Link again. So in our variance analysis, what we need is for someone to explain why there was a difference, be it from the prior month or from the variance of the budget. So again, historically, people would dump their TB to Excel. They would compare it to the previous month or try and get their actuals or their budget data and identify where the variance is and then put comments in Excel. Here, what we're doing is using BlackLine to capture the variance and to create variance items that explain what made up those differences. So our AR balance was meant to be 3.8. It came in at 3.6. There was a $125,000 difference. And we've explained that because we lost a couple of customers and there was a price increase. So once those explanations were posted in, we reduced our exposure level, and the person whose responsibility it is to prepare that variance will certify it. So as a CFO, I can view my variances and see what was done to explain that variance. So that's one way to look at risk, manage risk, but another way we deal with it is also through our reporting. So if I switch across now to reporting, I want to give you a couple of more examples of how we manage risk. And there's two examples I want to come up with. One would be how we might manage financial risk, so a required adjustments report, where we might see which entities have created these required adjustments or who prepared them. and also an operational risk report. So I mentioned before, account recs get rejected. I want to know why they're getting rejected, and I try and identify where the problem is. So if we look at our reports that were run within the system, we can see we've got our two types of reports. I'm just going to flip over to one of my report tabs. Here we're looking at operational risk, rejections with a reason code. So all of our reports have a visualization element and a listing element. So we can see on the bottom of the page all the reasons for rejections, but we can also see the categories. So some of these were have reasons, some of them have unidentified reasons. So perhaps we need to dig into those and say, well, maybe we need to create a few more categories. We can also edit these reports. So even as a CFO, it's not a complicated reporting tool. It's very easy to take an existing report and modify that report slightly. You can choose here in the grid view what columns you want to see in your report fields. You can sort things, but you can also go into your visualizations and you might turn around and say, look, what I'd like to know is firstly, I want to group it by certification reason code. And then within that reason code, I want to be able to see the different entities. So here I can see that, the primary culprit is undefined, but I also have a big issue with missing or incorrect data. If I'm assessing my operational risk from an entity perspective, I can see that most of my offices are performing fairly well. Something's not quite right in Atlanta. Maybe I've got to get one of my members of the other team to go and assist the Atlanta team so that they can not have so many issues and not have so many rejections. If I move across to a different type of report, so let's move across to a financial risk report. This one will show us, let's try that again. And let's go back into reports. I'll bring up one of my stored reports again. And let's look at our financial risks. So this report focuses more on any required adjustments that we've created within the month. But we're not just identifying required adjustments. The system is aging those adjustments for us. It's also categorizing those adjustments. It's also giving us visibility on, which of my entities are having those adjustments. So here I've got my Atlanta, my BlackLine, my London, and I can see the adjustments under each one. Again, just like the operational risk report, I can edit my report. And perhaps what I want to do is look at my required adjustments in a particular order. So very easily, even as the CFO, I can come in, I can click my report sorting. I can say, look, I want to see it by key account and also by aging category. So we can sort it by multiple criteria. And just like the other report, we can click on the visualizations. Perhaps you don't just want to see it by entity, but maybe you want to break that up and add another grouping and say, perhaps I want to see also broken down by key account. So within my report, I can see, looks like I've got a lot of stuff happening in Atlanta, key account. I can click on that item. I can see the 5 required adjustments that are listed there. And I can see the aging of those items. So that gives me that visibility report. So as a business leader, I guess you get a lot of visibility to all of the reconciliations, all of the task statuses that are being held in BlackLine, all that activity that's happening in your finance team. And you've got access to this information at any time. So all the finance information, all the key metrics, all the close statuses, and all this information allows you to enable you to manage that risk better. It can identify bottlenecks, so it allows you to improve your processes. Certainly, you have that comfort that your financials are more reliable, which ultimately lets you confidently push that information to your outputs, your other systems, and confidently rely on that data so you can make better business decisions. The important thing to note here is it doesn't really matter if you're a small finance team in a centralized location or an organization that's got finance teams around the country or around the world. The problems are the same. We want to make sure that we've got that control, that visibility, that standardization, and access to reliable information. Hopefully with the demo that you've seen today, you can go away and feel confident that BlackLine will allow you to achieve some of those. What I'd like to do is hand back to Ian now. And what he'd talk about is the journey some of our BlackLine customers go to. How do they implement these applications into their organization? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, David. That was a great demonstration. I'm just going to flick the slides ahead, if that's okay. There we go. So we do have a couple of questions that have come through. I just want to maybe just quickly spend 1 minute just going over some next steps before we get into the Q&A. So the next steps from here are completely up to our customers. But what we would generally see is what you can see on the slide here. We would definitely like to engage you all individually to uncover your specific close pains in a detailed discovery session. We often find that it's critical for the success of your initiative that you link the project to the goals of your C-suite. And we can assist you here using our activity analysis, which is our way of highlighting where the bottlenecks and the costs to your organization lie. And this process is going to give you some insight into the value that a BlackLine project will drive for your team. We'll follow this up by a tailored demonstration that will really show you how the solution will work for your business. And then we're going to put that together into a detailed project plan showing the steps required from here to go live and beyond, as well as a statement of work. So with that, we have 4 minutes left. I don't think we're going to get through all of the questions that have come in, but we can certainly have a crack at some of them. And if there is any questions that you've asked that we don't get to, we will send an email response. So the first question that's come through, a fairly simple one, does BlackLine integrate with Pronto? Absolutely it does. BlackLine actually integrates with any ERP system on the market today, as well as any source system. So if you have any payroll systems or other systems that you may be drawing data out of to form part of your close, we can connect to those systems as well. Okay, so the next question, do we only import recs into the ERP system once the recs are completed and approved? David, do you want to have an answer of that one?
Yeah, and I'm happy to discuss that in more detail with the person who asked the question, but essentially the recs are held within BlackLine. So your ERP is your transactional processing system, And once your GL balances are pushed into BlackLine and you're creating your supporting items, all of your recs are prepared and then approved and completed and remain in the BlackLine. And that's sort of where you then go down the path of perhaps allowing access to your auditors, where both internal and external, so that they can then come in and look at all those recs. Knowing that the data that's come into BlackLine has not touched any human hand, it's the trial balance from your GL. Hope that answers the question.
Fantastic. Thanks, David. So the next question, what sort of organizations typically need BlackLine? So the shorter answer to that is any organization. The longer answer is we have seen BlackLine work in various different industries at various different size organizations in very different ways. So that's why we sort of need that detailed discovery session with you to really understand what your business needs. The size of organizations, look, it's no secret that we've got the Under Armours and the Walmarts and the Nikes and of the world are all our clients. However, we do also service small clients. I mean, we have a physiotherapist's office in Gippsland in country Victoria that uses BlackLine. We have organisations that have sort of 1 or 2 users as well, and the entire gamut of organisations in between. And just with the last, I think that's all the time we have for questions. There's a couple of other questions we will get back to you via email. But with that, I would like to close out, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. I really hope we've been able to show you that BlackLine is able to enable a remote close for your organisation as we go into the future of work. We're going to be in touch to help you with your evaluation. I'd like to thank you very much for coming along today, and thanks also to our partners at 4 Point, John and David. Thank you very much. Have a great day ahead.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Cheers, Ian.